Nicole Strickland. I have been fascinated with the unknown and paranormal realms since childhood. After a profound experience with my grandmother's spirit 20 years ago, I have been on a quest to observe, study, investigate, and communicate with the afterlife and beyond. It's been an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery, one that has taught me how mortality and the spirit world are forever bonded through the veils of time. Good evening tonight, everyone, on this fabulous Thursday, April 21st, almost May. May is my birthday month. Hello, going to be 43 years. That's a whole nother discussion. So anyways, you're tuning into another episode of the Afterlife Chronicles right here on WLTK-DB. You guys know the website, WLTK-DB.com. Some of you may be tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are. Glad to see you tonight. A few announcements before I bring in tonight's very special guest, a good friend of mine. So Realm of Darkness, the show right before mine with hosts Rini Rodriguez and Ashley Moreno. They talked about the Corina Smith case. If you missed that show, it will be archived for you on WLTKDB.podbean.com. And of course, I do want to promote the OC Paracon, which is going to be held in Anaheim, California, near Disneyland on October 1st and 2nd. I believe it's its second year. So OC Paracon. Right now, you can learn about the event on its Facebook page at OC Paracon. OC Paracon, I was going to say .com, but that's its Facebook page, OC Paracon. I'm very lucky I was asked to speak about the Queen Mary, and of course I'll be a panelist there. Show host, Paranormal Pete, Pete Orbea, Paranormal Pete. He's also going to be there as well, speaker and panelist, so we're very excited about that. And of course, go to my website under the events section, authornicolestrickland.com, for some upcoming events that I have this summer. You can follow us here right at just with that handle, WLTKDB. That will get you to our Twitter, YouTube, Facebook pages. You know it. Of course, you can follow the Afterlife Chronicles on Facebook at Afterlife Chronicles and Beyond. And of course, afterlifechronicles.podbean.com. Okay, enough about that. So tonight, very special guest coming on tonight. I was just on his show, Into the Outer Realms, right before at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We had a very great discussion, so we're going to continue that discussion. Joey Madia, lots of accolades, my goodness. Afterlife paranormal researcher, experiencer, radio host, author, you name it. Poet, playwright, actor, you name it. So he's coming on for his second appearance tonight. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. The audience is going to be very blessed to hear what he has to say. So Joey, you've been there. We didn't black you out. You're here. That's fine.
Thank you. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Usually we black out the guests and bring them on, but that's okay.
You don't want to draw focus, as we say, in acting,
right? Yeah.
But you don't want to look like you have resting, you're like annoyance face. Thank you for having me on again. I'm so excited. We had such a good time the last hour.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny when we do these double headers, because I think it was last May when we did it, and I was on your show. Tonya, your lovely wife, is here in spirit, so of course, but we did that last year, and then you guys came on mine. So, and we're using StreamYard now, which is good. I love
I love it. That's what I use. It's good platform.
Yeah. So how are you?
I am pretty spectacular. The old career is going good. Just signed a big screenwriting contract.
That's right.
And keeping it. And this Friday I deliver. It's kind of out there. People haven't talked about it a lot. But if your listeners are into The Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Who isn't, right?
I'm delivering, it's a play, but it's a musical, but it has rap and it has dream sequences and parallel storytelling to try to kind of tell the definitive story about what happened in 66, 67, which we don't know. but to try to get as close as possible through witnesses, the mentorship with Rosemary. So life is good. Other than Tanya's living 7 hours away doing some amazing work, life is pretty spectacular.
That is so amazing to hear. I always
Thank you.
love to hear when people are doing well. Barry Getz is in the chat. Hi, Barry. Good to see you again. Sharon Plummer Adorno and Linda Myers. Hello, Linda. Nice to see you in there. I have to confess something. I am so bad at flashing comments. So if I forget to do that, I do apologize. But
Sharon,
anyways,
thanks for sharing us coming over. We have some people
yeah.
that came over from the first
So
hour, so they want to hear more. That's
I
good.
know, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so great. So I usually start out, I mean, obviously a lot of listeners know you and know your work, but in case there are a few that don't, give us a little background of how you started on your path in paranormal research.
Yeah, for so many years as we've been doing this work, I would say it was probably the experience that we had in Point Pleasant, which I will get to. But when I was just talking to my son about it, I grew up Roman Catholic.
So
So
did
from
I.
my earliest memories, I have grown up with the supernatural and the paranormal. Transmogrification of water and wine, walking on water, raising from the dead, the 3-in-1 and the Holy Spirit, and the saints that smell of roses and the stigmata. So I grew up in a totally mystical world.
That's
And
amazing.
that's what I loved about it. That's what I loved about it. So I had this really weird, very frightening experience when I was 16 with a Ouija board. A real short story. It's I tell it more in my books at length. But so we're 16 years old. We're all in the theater department, and these two girls bring in a Ouija board. Now,
Oh
the
my
only
goodness.
thing I knew about a Ouija board was that my aunt had one. And on holidays, we would go up in the finished attic and we would spell out dirty words. That's what I thought the Ouija board was for. Okay. So I'm lucky that I made it out clean. But, and they had a very typical trope kind of experience where this young person is communicating with them and they're from frontier days, but someone managed chasing them, and this is unfolding over days. But then you find out it's not the kid, it's actually the man who murdered the kid. And the
Right.
girls are getting freaked out. They stop coming to school, Nicole. They get addicted to this thing, and for 2 or 3 days they're in one of the girls' basements. So I'm 16 years old, Italian American, living at the Jersey Shore, an actor. So we're all larger than life, and immortal. And we're like, my Italian friends and I are like, we're gonna go over and put an end to this crap.
Oh
So
my God.
word gets around that Joey and Louie and some of these other guys, some of the Italian guys are going to break up this Ouija board thing. So we're down in the basement. There's like 26 people in the room. There's candles like on the ledge of this basement, everywhere, this finished basement. And the girls are getting freaked out and this thing is terrorizing them. And I go, if you're so whatever, do something to us. Well, about half the candles blow out, Nicole. And for a second, I felt my heart and the world stop beating, stop turning for about a half a second. About 5 years later, I got caught in a very big storm off the Jersey Shore in a 26-foot sailboat with a
Oh my
veteran
gosh.
sailor.
That's the
And
stuff
when
of
I saw
nightmares right
fear in
there.
his eyes, like we maybe weren't going to make it home, that was the experience with the Ouija board. So that was profound because the ocean can be beautiful, but it can be deadly. And sometimes the more occulty, dark entity kind of part of our work, which has always been low percentage for us, because I think you attract what you are, what your energy is. That was profound. And then, of course, we could talk about the experience in Point Pleasant in 2009, but that's what put us on the door from me sort of having mostly passive experiences and interests in this mystical life growing up Catholic to actually saying to Tanya, literally, if the paranormal's going to investigate us, I'm going to investigate it back. And
Okay.
that's,
That's intriguing. Rini just joined. Hi, Rini. Nice to see you. Sharon said, way to go. Yikes. And it's interesting because when you hear people, I like to ask paranormal investigators, was there one singular profound experience that got you started? And the majority of the people have a very positive experience. Yours
Yeah.
wasn't so positive, it was more negative. And so
Yeah.
that's interesting how it fueled your passion.
Yeah.
I too, Italian American, grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and it's interesting. I've had people say, "Wow, you're the only Catholic person I know that's into the paranormal." Do you get that as well? When
So,
I've had a couple of people tell me that.
sometimes, but my theater company initially, we had so much pressure that we changed the name, but the theater company and my literary website and all are still called New Mystics.
Right.
And there is a quasi religious group called New Mystics that was formed a couple years after I formed my thing. So there is some confusion, but the whole idea of mystic and mysticism and all,
Mhm.
and I opened up an art center in West Virginia. I got so much pushback, and I remember having a lunch with someone and going, like, the first 8 to 10 people that I talked to in this town loved the name New Mystics. So what happened?
I
And she
think it's
said,
great.
Joey, we're all Catholics. And I went, ah.
Mm.
So Catholics, it's just, yeah, but I will say, that was a negative experience. And for the next 13, for the next 13 years of my life, Nicole, I had nothing to do with anything paranormal. I cover my eyes in slasher movies. I don't like to watch them and all of that kind of thing. It wasn't until I married Tonya, and she's such a psychic battery
Right. Of course.
that every place we lived, we started to have these experiences. That was 1997. In 2009, we had fallen in love with Point Pleasant, West Virginia. We're very into the Mothman from the movie and the book. And Tonya took a while to convince me. Anyway, we drove there. We were living in West Virginia. It was about 2.5 hours away. We had an experience with missing time, 2.5 hours.
This is incredible. This
It
is
was,
mm.
you want me to?
Yes, please do. And then
Yeah.
I'll share a little, not
Yeah.
as profound as yours with that, but I did have what I think is a time slip experience, but you go first.
So we go to the town, and it's like stuck in time. I mean, I got commissioned to write a play about it, and I've written books about it, and it's so profound, and it's a beautiful little town on the Ohio River with a rich history, and it just felt stuck in time. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is so charming. We're so glad we came here. And we met this man who's since passed called Bob Langerman. He had a little shop. And we had a map of the TNT area down there where they used to make munitions, World War II. That's where Mothman was seen in 66, 67. And he kind of gives us a little insider information. Okay, great. So we take the map and we go down. It is a gorgeous day. It's August, I believe, 15th, 2009. Blue sky, ducks on the pond, but quiet. And I felt like we were going to die at any minute. I
Oh my
learned
gosh.
years later that Keel calls that the zone of fear. We were deep in the zone of fear. I couldn't go into the igloos. I stuck my finger in and got a couple pictures with a digital camera. Tonya and I, because we had heard from Bob that there were Native American spirits attached to the area, we had gotten some sage from him. We left a sage offering and we left. We got in the car. We're driving back to town. It's about a 12-minute drive. And we're saying, wow, what was that? Why did we feel like we were going to die? I grew up in Jersey, riding my bike and swimming in rivers in the Pine Barrens where the Jersey Devil is. Nature doesn't bother me. In camp and, in the Poconos. I was so freaked out with the disconnect, the dissonance between the beauty and the fear. And we're driving down the road in our Ford Explorer, and we turn to each other and we say, did you just see that? Now, we both have agreed that if either one of us hadn't said that, we probably would have dismissed it. We saw an interdimensional being appear at the side of the road, pass over the roadway about 10 or 12 feet high, and blink out by a cornfield. There were 2 cornfields. We got back to town, and we wanted to share with Bob. He said, if anything happens, let me know. So we knock on his door, and it should be about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. and it's closed. His shop is closed. And I'm like, okay, small town, but like 3 o'clock on a Saturday and you close your
Right.
store? Like, what the hell?
But
So he comes
exactly.
to the door and I can't remember if it was a watch or like a primitive cell phone or whatever in 2009. But I go, hun, it's 5:30. It's 5:30, babe. It should only be 3 o'clock. Like, what the hell? So Bob listened to our story, put us in touch with a couple of paranormal investigators who put us in touch with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. And Rosemary was so intrigued by her story that she and 4 or 5 other Point Pleasant researchers meet us in November. We trace the route. We go to the exact spots. This is where it starts to get really interesting, Nicole. We go to the exact spot where we saw the 2 cornfields. There is a cornfield on the right. On the left, there's a house that's been there for at least 20 years. The distance between where we saw this thing and going back to town felt like 6 times, 7 times longer than it actually is. We had time distortion. The other weird thing is I saw a gas station that does not exist on that road. I saw it. I could describe it. I knew the colors of the pumps and all. Okay, so that was, people were interested, and Rosemary took a shine to us, and we started going to Point Pleasant and started to learn as very humble mentees, because it's like I'm a guitar player, and all of a sudden, like Jimi Hendrix starts to mentor you, you go, wow, this is heavy. Like, I'm just going to try to keep up. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and keep up because this is crazy. And people are going, really? Rosemary Ellen Guiley? Like, she's a big deal, right? And we're going, yeah, we're starting to get that sense. And then she's everywhere. And so flash forward, we're on a radio show. Our first book has come out and all that. We're on a radio show, and the guy goes, have you ever thought about getting regressed and find out what happened in that 2.5 hours? This was 2 years ago. And we went, no, we've never thought of it. It's never occurred to us. Rosemary never mentioned it. No one ever mentioned it. So Tonya and I separately, me in October, her in November, just because of scheduling and stuff, underwent hypnotic regression.
Oh, that's amazing. You know what? Can hold that thought. We do
Sure.
have to take a first break,
Okay.
and then I want to delve more into this because this is so fascinating. I have a couple thoughts on it. So you are tuning into the Afterlife Chronicles tonight with special guest Joey Madia. Newmystics.com is his website. We will be right back, guys. Stay tuned.
DeEtte Renee, psychic medium. All of us have questions about our lives, our loved ones, our futures. DeEtte Renee is here to help answer those difficult questions. DeEtte excels at working with spirit and is a certified psychic medium through LWISSD. She is a master teacher and well-versed in the spirit world. Look, don't trust just any psychic with your deepest thoughts and worries. Trust DeEtte Renee, as she will deliver her very best for you. General readings, past loved ones, finances, your future. Contact DeEtte now on her website, DeEtteRenee.com. That's DeEtteRenee.com.
Minutes past the hour, you're tuning back into the Afterlife Chronicles right here on the WLTK-DB network. My guest tonight is good friend and colleague Joey Madia, storyteller, paranormal researcher, actor, poet, playwright, author, you name it. His website's newmystics.com. Go there. It's a fabulous site. So right before the break, we were talking about his pretty much one of his origin experiences in the paranormal and encounter that he and his wife had with an interdimensional being in time slip. And you were just about to get into how you both got regressed.
Right.
And so how was that experience and what did you learn?
Right. So just to recontextualize it. So the initial experience is in 2009. This is a decade later.
Okay, right. Okay.
where we've talked about it, but the time was missing. We did have the time distortions and all of that kind of stuff. And I was kind of excited. Tonya at the time was getting her hypnosis certification at ARE. At the Edgar Cayce Institute. So studying with someone with a very good pedigree. So it wasn't that foreign to us, because I'll be honest with you, some of the Bud Hopkins stuff, some of the Whitley Strieber stuff and all, I just go, you listen to some of the tapes and you go, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but he's kind of leading the witness. There's some implanting. So, but I said, okay, let's do it. So they said, okay, you go first. And I said, okay, cool, let's do this. So I will say that Tonya and I's experiences, not dissimilar to Betty and Barney Hill, were considerably different. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So basically, here's what happened to me. That feeling of being watched, that feeling of fear by the igloos, was because of this fella.
Is that what you saw?
That is what I saw without recalling that I had seen it. Now, a very good artist friend of mine who's done some stuff for like Dead Files, and he's a wonderful artist. We had tapes, we have digital recordings of our hypnosis sessions. So after mine, I sent it to like 5 or 6 colleagues. I didn't know you at the time, or you would have been on that list. And
why, thank you.
Yeah, because it was so profound. I was like, I really need somebody else to break this down for me. I cannot analyze my own story. So I sent it to him, just at it. He was curious, and he said, do you mind if I sketch what you saw? So this is what it was. If you notice, it's sort of like a deer being. It's sort of like the elk shaman. A little reminds me of the Lascaux Caves. And
absolutely,
that was a fascinating totem for me. So it could be why he manifested. But if you look at his eyes, they're a little bit owl, but a little bit alien, a little bit gray alien.
Yes, you can see that.
It's very profound. So he was looking at me. We found out that this was phase 1. They can sense me. Then we see the entity that looked nothing like this fella over the road. Oh, they can see me. Let's see how far we can go. And so Nicole, this is what came out in the hypnotic. The car starts to go Wonder Woman translucent. So we're driving in the car, but I look down and I can see the transmission, I can see the drivetrain, and the car becomes less and less dense, less and less material. Then it starts to spin like a centrifuge. And this is all under hypnosis. This is nothing that we recall from. And I wind up on this Technicolor set. It kind of looks like the Wizard of Oz when they're in the woods.
Right, yeah.
But it's got a pristine barn. It's got a pristine silo. The ground sort of looks AstroTurf. It looks like a film set, which I've been on. And so Joey, of course, says, this is fake. And these beings, you can kind of... Do you see these little fingers down here?
Yes.
I described those. When I was a little kid, we used to take black olives and put them on our fingertips.
Yeah. Oh, who hasn't done that?
And it was this 3-fingered bulbous kind of, which in doing research after, like a lot of Greys and these ETs, like have these things.
Exactly. That's what they look like.
And that's what I see. They're kind of wrapped around me. That's why you don't see their face. And they're going, just go with it. Just go with it. Don't think about it. Just go with it. And I'm like, look, that silo doesn't look like it's ever been used. Maybe you need some animals in your barn. And they're like freaking out. They're going, just kind of relax. Now, I had kidney stones when I was in my 20s, and I had to go for a colonoscopy. All the kidney stone treatments and the colonoscopy, the anesthesia didn't work. It deadened the pain. But I was like, oh, hell no. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see my insides. I'm not going to sleep.
Oh, you are a brave soul. My goodness.
I just have this. I have this insatiable curiosity. I just have to know, right? That's what drives me. My book that's coming out, I think next year, because all these other projects, is Parallels and Patterns: My Lifelong Quest for Answers.
I love that. Oh,
I just have this weird. Yeah, I have this weird burning desire to know. So they're going, not a good candidate, not a good cat. You can hear it on the tape. I'm going, not a good candidate. And the the person doing the hypnosis goes, "Was Tonya a good candidate?" And I went, "Oh yeah, Tanya's a great candidate, but I'm not a good candidate." So
Oh my goodness.
they released me. Now Tonya, they took her into a cylindrical ship. They had a black box. They looked very much like Greys, and they ran this black box over. It was a much more classic, like, sort of abduction. No probing, no needles, no pain. And Tonya being Tonya, she said, "How long is this going to take? Because I'm busy." So, but on the far side of it, and we were very good about not comparing my notes. Just like when we first saw this thing, we didn't tell each other what we saw. We went to a restaurant and we sketched it, and our 2 sketches were almost identical. It was spooky.
I have a question about.
Yeah.
So when you saw this being,
was this
the
guy?
Process? Yes. Was the process of seeing it and visualizing it similar to when you, let's say, see an apparition? Was there a difference in the amount of time that you saw it, or the surroundings around it? And then did you and Tonya talk about that after, not just what you saw, but how you saw it? Was that similar?
Yeah. So she didn't see the deer guy. She actually saw the gray kind of. She's very specific in saying they weren't grays, but they were kind of like grays. They were a little more like lamb, a little more like Crowley's lamb.
Okay.
But for me, I've been lucky enough to see some full-bodied apparitions and things like that. My skills have gotten better, I think, being around Tonya and our daughter Jolie, who's a very gifted psychic medium too. It was so profound. It was profound. I mean, this hangs right over my desk, and I just look at it and go, whatever this was, it had layers of, I don't know what it really looked like. I think the eyes kind of tell it, and those are not a deer or an elk's eyes.
No, not by a long shot.
And he's got this weird,
his little goatee too. He sketched that
like
really
a goat
well.
Kind of, yeah. Chuck's super talented, Chuck Regan, and he, like I said, he was on an episode of Dead Files, sketching for them. But so here was the big thing. I remember after Tanya's session, we went and stayed with some friends for a weekend, and we were having coffee, and I woke up and I said, everybody knows us as the ghost people, and they've accepted us. And Rosemary was sort of our, that was our pedigree. We're with Rosemary Ellen Guiley, so, but now we're going to come out and we're going to say, oh, by the way, we had this hypnotic, and now we were abducted by ETs, and there's this deer thing. I went, I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death what's going to happen. I'm feeling like Whitley Strieber, who I was always the guy that goes, he wrote Wolfen. Come on, he's making it up. It's easier. And suddenly I'm in that position. I go, geez, I'm a storyteller. And people are going to go, you're full of crap. So Nicole, within 2 or 3 weeks, we were relaunching our show. We had left a network and went out on our own. And I said, Tonya, our very first episode, we're just going to talk about this.
Yes,
we're just going to take people.
Absolutely.
We spent 90 minutes talking about it. And Nicole, there's been zero pushback. Which we're immensely grateful.
That's amazing. With this time slip. Now, what are your theories as to why time slips happen and why it happens to certain people?
Yeah. It's everything like Tesla said, everything is frequency, energy, and vibration.
Right on.
And I think part of it is just how we're born and the density of our energy field. By that time, by 2009, for 7 years, Tonya and I have been doing transcendental meditation, astral travel, drum journeying, shamanic drum journeying. So I think our vibration kind of allowed for it. I think time slips happen because you're going into another dimension. You're going into a liminal zone where other parts of consciousness are working and operating. I think the soul is a lot more active there.
I was just going to say more activated.
Yeah, and time space breaks down. So that's
Yes.
why it felt longer. And I think that's why the time is missing, right? Think about fairy lore, right? Which there's so many cool overlaps between fairy lore and UFO lore. People go into the fairy mound for what they think is a day, and they come out and it's been a year. And
Yes.
I think it's that. I think it's that. I think when we astral travel, when we lucid dream, the things we talked about, for the hour on Into the Outer Realms, and we've talked about many times before, it's that energy vibration level. And if you allow that to happen, and I think we held that through our telling of the story, and it was credible. It was credible. And
Yes.
you and I
You can
talked about
tell
that in the
when,
past hour.
yeah, you can tell when someone's genuine and being credible. And
Yeah.
I believe that the whole time space continuum, it's almost like it's changing. Time is changing
Yes.
here on this realm. Does it exist in other realms? Maybe it does in a different form, maybe it doesn't. But I feel that there are these shifts and these frequencies and vibrations. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I agree. And in the past 4 or 5 years, I spend increasing amount of times in parallel universes while I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
And I know it's different. And I do very similar work there, but the timeline is I'm getting very into, there's a woman named Solaris Blue Raven who's doing some pretty incredible work with timeline shifts and all that. And I'm getting very into this idea of not only parallel universes and all, but different timelines. Because I got into quantum physics as we were
Oh,
trying to make
yes.
sense of all this,
So
right?
fascinating.
And I think a lot of with manifestation, which I'm very, very careful about, because careful what you wish for, and genies and all that kind of stuff. But there are wave probabilities. There are waves of probability. And the more that you focus and concentrate, they start to collapse until a singularity remains. And we wound up in this singularity in 2009 because I guess we were supposed to. I'll tell you what's so odd, and I'd love your thoughts on it. We have never, now our story's been on television because producers will call us. And they say, we heard that you have this amazing story. And so we tell the story and they go, now tell us about, because they're looking for the third act, right?
Oh, of course.
Tell us how
time.
your
Yes.
life fell apart. Tell us how you were cursed.
That's exactly, yes.
No, we met Rosemary Ellen Guiley. We met our best friends in the world. We've traveled all over. We've published books. We've spoken at conferences. We have our own. No, this is a happy ending. And it's like, yeah, okay. And I swear to you, there was
I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I had an experience where I had this encounter at a restaurant. The producer wanted me to change my story. She was trying to get me to change it, so it was just this terrifying, and it wasn't. Yeah. I'm telling you how it happened. You can't get any more out of me.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. It's all been positive and it's opened amazing doors. And I get very, this whole disclosure thing with UFOs are a threat. They're a threat because we don't know what they are. And it's like, yeah, okay, we can buy into this darkness and evil and misery narrative. Right. Or we can say, just like in real life, you're going to meet ugly people who do ugly things, who are dangerous, but that is not, by and large, who you're encountering in life. It's the exception, not the rule.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is such a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm looking at the time. I do want to get into, I wish we had like 5 hours. I do want to get into your experiences with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I think many people obviously know who she is. I knew her. I was lucky to work with her on the few occasions that I did. Just an all-around fabulous person. And you've had some amazing, profound experiences with her, both in life and in spirit. So
we did. What I love really strong people who tell you like it is. That's how I grew up. So Carolyn Mace, the wonderful, I love her toughness. And when she goes, you're not special. You're not special. Get over it. Don't compare wounds. Don't lead with your wounds. Get over all of this. And I love that approach. And Rosemary, and I could count on half of one hand how many times I upset her. But she was always very clear about And I love that. And it wasn't anything major. It's just, sometimes you get a little ahead of yourself. And so our experiences with her was a mentor who became a friend, who then became a mentor to our daughter during a very tough time, and became a publisher, and then became a colleague towards the end, became a colleague. So we had this huge journey with her. And there are a couple stories I want to share tonight. Rosemary was sick for a little over a year. She was very, very sick, which she kept quiet, a very public figure and a very private person. Yeah. And she had canceled some events that we were supposed to do together. A few were very high profile and she couldn't make it. And we started to get concerned, but Tonya and I are respectful, and we didn't push. And I was sitting in my office and I was working and I was concentrating. I was editing a document and I got this compulsion to lift up my head, and I was fighting it. I was like, I need to concentrate, like stop, whatever this is. But my head came up, and right where all Rosemary's books were and one of her scrying mirrors that her husband Joe and her would make themselves, she was standing in front of it. She was in my office. And we hadn't spoken in about 10 days or so. And so I went out to Tonya and I said, look, this is what's happened. We need to call Joe. We need to call her husband and find out what's going on. So I think I emailed him. I said, here's what happened. He said, let me call you. He said, we're expecting her to go any day. She's in hospice. Man. So that was profound, because she was testing. She was out of her body and testing. And I think I've spoken to one other person who right before she died, they visited. And it's one of those things where I don't ask too many questions. As curious as I am, which I said that, I don't need to ask why me. Why that day? Why? But it really helped. It helped. And I think she knew I don't have the skills that Tonya has. My instrument isn't as attuned. So after she passed, she spent so much time with Tonya. And Tonya could see her and talk to her. But that was my best opportunity. All of my contact with her was secondhand. But through people who I would hear her on the PSB 11, or I would get a thought in my head and I would talk to a colleague, and invariably she had said the same thing to them, but it was through a tarot reader or so. And then Tonya was doing automatic writing, which is another gift she has. And Rosemary said, I'm here with Keel. We're talking with Bigfoot. It's amazing. And that was wonderful. The big story that I want to share, and I want to preface this with, I have permission from her husband to tell this story.
Oh, that's great.
So it was about 3 weeks before Valentine's Day 2021. And Tonya gets a communication from Rosemary. Now, Tonya and I were writing a big essay for a very big grant we were trying to get. And I don't want to go into details, but I was like, this isn't for us. This is gatekeepers. This is a huge commitment, babe. This is like a third of a book we have to write for this essay. Like, let's put our time. So she said, let me ask Rosemary. So she asked Rosemary, and Rosemary gave her a thumbs up. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're writing this 25,000 word essay. And Rosemary dictated the outline to Tonya. Now, when I tell this story, I say Tanya's a wonderful writer and a great communicator. But this was not Tanya's work. This was whole other level. So I'm paying attention. Yeah, this is a little just sideways. So we were working very closely with her. As a matter of fact, Nicole, we finished that. Now, I've written like 12 books. I majored in English. I'm a professional editor, writer in all kinds of genres. And Tonya comes to me and says, Rosemary doesn't like your ending. She wants to rewrite it. So I had for I'm just going to say
I
this
could
publicly.
see her doing this. She was so straightforward, though, but in a loving way.
I was so angry for 2 days. I was like, you're rewriting my stuff from Beyond the Veil. Like, are you kidding me? Do you know who I am? Like, it was this weird meltdown.
Oh
and
God.
Tonya had to bear the brunt of it. But you know what? I said, no. Let's do it. And Nicole was great. It was great. She wanted me to lift something out that I didn't want to lift out. And I said, okay, we'll take it out. We'll put it in a footnote. We'll put it in a URL, which is what we did.
You're going to put it in there somewhere.
Yeah. So while all of this is going on, Tonya comes to me and she says, I got this message from Rosemary. She wants you to order a dozen roses for Joe. She's going to take you through it, and she wants you to send them to him for Valentine's Day. And don't say anything. No, I love you, Rosemary. That's the card. So I said, babe, we're going to do this? And she said, yeah. She said she'll take you through it. So I very clandestinely get Joe's address because, and I call the florist and I say, look, here's the situation. I said, I have a very dear friend who passed away, and she tasked me with, I didn't tell them that she communicated from beyond the grave. I made it sound like, because I had a job to do. Yeah. She set up ahead of time. So I start describing it, Nicole, and all I can say is I wasn't in a liminal state. I wasn't in a hypnosis state, but I'm talking about the baby's breath and the configuration of the leaves and the kind of roses. And these are things that I'm not an expert on. And the girl was practically crying. She's like, we are going to make this so beautiful for you. I'm going to have my supervisor do it and everything will be taken care of. And Joe calls me Valentine's night. And he says, thank you guys so much for the flowers. This means so much to me that you did this. And I said,
he thought they were from you.
They were from us. And I said, Joe, you got to understand. I said, Rosemary came to Tonya. She took me through it. And he said, well, let me tell you, we had no pictures taken at our wedding. The one decoration we had was a dozen roses that looked just like this on the table. Sorry, you cried on my show. I'm returning the favor.
No, I feel it.
That was amazing. And not long after that, like you said, 6-7 months ago now. So she just stopped coming around, and I think she's moved on to a larger plane. So we learned just as much from her in 2.5 years after she passed than we did in 10 years that she was alive. I mean, and that's extraordinary.
That's absolutely extraordinary is the perfect word for it. Now, I found out about her passing when I was up in the Pacific Northwest filming for a project. So I had to not, I was trying so hard to not cry. And of course I did later that night, had a massive headache. But I've had Rosemary's come to me a couple of times. One was very profound because I was in this state where we all do, I can't say all of us, but many of us do this, where we'll at times go into the comparison mode where, you're trying to compare yourself to others and all of that. And she came in very strongly and she said, Nicole, stop that, knock that off. You're blazing your trail. Keep doing it. You're doing it the way it should be done. And it just was it was so profound that I will always remember that.
And that sounds like her.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. In the first year, you asked me about mimics and death spirits and, tricksters and all that kind of stuff. And Tonya gets to talk to the coolest people. She's gotten schooled by Ingo Swann from Beyond the Grave, Ram Dass's guru, Baba, Neem Karoli. She's just open to all these doors, and they give her really hard lessons. And Rosemary was the hardest. When Rosemary first passed, she said to Tonya, we're going to write a book together, and she kind of came to Tonya at one point and said, you're just not ready. This isn't working. We're not, and, that was Rosemary that was not a trickster. That was Rosemary.
No, you can tell.
Yeah, that was Rosemary.
Really can tell.
Yeah.
Not
and
just by the experiences, but you can just tell innately. Your wisdom just lets you know.
Right. And Tanya's path wound up, she's doing this amazing work now that's taken her, 7 hours away, and we're dealing with it. We see each other for a couple days, like every 6 weeks. But the work that she's doing is amazing. And in her own way, Rosemary opened that door because Tonya sort of released and let go of some things through that whole experience. And that's that's how you know. People go, how do you know who you're talking to? You know who you're talking to.
And it's something that is, and I say this, it's something that should not be defined, but it's meant to be experienced.
Yes.
So it's something that you may not be able to definitively, categorize in words, but the experience you master. And to me, that's what's most important. She was and is such a legendary individual. That just absolutely fabulous. Her books are phenomenal too. If you have not read any of her books, guys, please pick them up. They're phenomenal, as well as yours and Tanya's are, right now. I have this one right here. This is part of your it's a trilogy of the Stanton Chronicles. So I have this one here, and this is the one that you mentioned some history of the Queen Mary in, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it just jived. I was reading all of your books, prepping for your appearance, getting to know you, and I was writing about 36, 37, 38 around that time, and that's where the ribbon got exchanged and the transatlantic. And I was like, I have to do this. This is meant to be. This is meant to be. So
Absolutely.
I had to include you in the acknowledgements. Yeah, the Stanton Chronicles is this big sort of ongoing thing, but there's that one, and then there's the Three Gothic Doctors. Now I'm writing a Jack the Ripper book. The next
my gosh, that's going to be so awesome! And
trying to honor the victims. That's
awesome. That I like to hear that. Speaking, you're a writer, nonfiction, fiction, poet. How has your work in the spiritual realm and the paranormal shaped your writing?
It's coming from poetry. When I really started doing the drum journeying and the transcendental meditation and I was bringing back all of this very non-concrete, very abstract. There's always been this weird warm, Carl Jung talked about number one and number two, right? And number two is kind of the shadow, and they fought this horrible battle inside of me all through high school, all through college, all through my 20s. I had a marriage that fell to pieces because I was in conflict with myself. So I couldn't be in harmony with anyone else. And I kind of learned how to integrate all that. And all this material was getting generated. And I said, this is cool. This is a cool sort of metaphorical way. And what I found, because all my work has a paranormal element to it, is that people who aren't ready to embrace it as fact love it in fiction. And they're still getting the information. And so I love that. It's just a way to reach a different audience.
Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres.
Me too, because I'm a research addict.
Oh gosh, me too.
Yeah. Gary Mance calls me like the king of research, which is a huge compliment. But if I can do anything with my time when I have I almost like researching more than I like writing.
Oh, I love it. I could be in the archives all day long and be just totally fine, right?
Because I'm looking.
People look at me like,
for
what?
Answers.
Yeah,
I'm looking for answers. I, not to be political in any way, but I'll just say from 9/11, I've sort of been mourning the death of complexity. People are I'm either here or I'm here, and it's like, folks, like life is here.
Is in the middle,
it's
right?
Here. It's here. And I read a really profound thing in Esquire magazine probably a decade ago, around 9/11. It was this guy, and he said, I don't read anything that I agree with. And just the other day, I was editing an academic paper, and the guy said, I don't allow my students to quote me or quote my work and their work unless they're disagreeing with me. And I kind of like that. I mean, yes, of course,
that is very fascinating.
Yeah,
I can see that though.
Time's precious. And so I don't want to give away my political position or anything, but I will listen to people on the far end of the spectrum. And sometimes I will agree with them, and, even a stopped clock is right twice a day, but it's more than that. It's more than that. I think that complexity is beautiful, and my writing, because I'm a very technical writer, so I love to outline an index card, and I have all these different structural frameworks that I put all my work through. And people kind of frown on that, and they kind of go, oh, well, you're just, you're not, that's not freedom of art.
Yeah, but that if that works for you, then,
And there's a moment on the other side of all that structure where you leave that house you've built and there's just a vast expanse out there, but you have that structure, you have all that stuff. So it's they inform each other now, which I love. Because sometimes in my research you find out life is way the hell stranger than fiction, you know?
Absolutely. We were talking on your show earlier about, this connection between the living world and afterlife. And I hear that in what you just said, that your writing and your work as in the paranormal, they connect with each other. They unite.
Yeah.
So that's very beautiful. A very beautiful thing. My mom, now I have written a little bit of poetry, but my mother is an amazing, amazing natural poet. What she just pumps out, she'll just pump it out just in 5 seconds. I'm like, what? So I keep hinting at her to publish her stories, but I don't know if she will. So.
I'd love to read some of it. That's what I learned. That's what I learned doing the transcendental meditation and the astral travel, and then writing during that. And what I learned was you have to bring it back to your audience, which is really interesting, because the stuff I was bringing back, like I was setting it out. I had a pretty good track record as a published poet, and they were like, we don't know what the hell this is. Like there's no context. So I had to re-concretize it just a little and learn how to put it in other places. And that was wonderful. But I think you brought up a great point. We talk about the muses, and we talk about Gay Hendricks, who I love his work. He talks about Einstein time, where you sit down to write, and next thing you know, 7 hours have gone by.
Like that. Exactly.
That proves that time space breaks down, because you're sort of astral traveling. You're going out where the stories live. Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic is very cool too, about that. And so allowing myself to untether and go out and bring that stuff back, put it into a framework and settle it all down. So I'm not talking gibberish. It's frustrating as a writer when people come back to you and go, do you take like massive amounts of drugs?
Oh my gosh.
Something's going. Yeah, that was probably 10, 15 years ago. So it's a journey.
It is a journey, and you have to, that's what's most important. It's not the end result. It's that journey.
I agree. I don't sweat book sales. I'm terrible with self-promotion.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Because I really do love the journey, and I love getting lost. You know, I'll text Tonya and say, okay, the phone's going in another room for 2 hours. Or I'll tell our son who's staying with us for a little while, all right, don't knock on my door because I'm not going to answer. This is like, get lost in space time.
And that's how you know you love what you do too. When those hours go by. Oh my gosh. I can't wait to have you back so we can explore. There's so many other avenues we didn't go down tonight, of course, because of that T word, time. But with the few minutes we have left, plug yourself. Like you said on your show, brag about yourself, plug yourself, events coming up, books that are coming up, all of that.
Yeah, so I write this interesting paranormal pirate series because I in my alternate life I play a Scottish pirate named Angus McGregor. It's my social justice stuff.
Nice.
The 1700s was a really cool, rich time. If you want to know what's going on now in politics and geopolitics, go back to the early 1700s, which was a rehearsal for the American Revolution. So the fourth book will come out in October, which is kind of crazy. I'm writing the Jack the Ripper book. My next nonfiction book, because of the screenwriting contract and the Mothman play and some other cool stuff, will be 2023, but it's called Parallels and Patterns, My Lifelong Quest for Answers.
Oh, I love that.
I like to take massive amounts of data from very disparate places, different cultures. I love Joe Campbell, so I love comparative. And you go, okay, well, here's a story from Argentina in the 1700s. Here's a story from New York City in 2021. Here's a story from BC in the Sumerian tablets. And when we break the stories down, there are all these really cool parallels and patterns. And to me, not being a psychic medium, not being an Ian Sanderson who can crunch a lot of data on reincarnation, and my story, my research and aggregating, deconstruction and reconstruction is where patterns start to emerge, where we kind of go, something's going on here. And then, so if you want to reach out to me, if you want to talk, I love to talk shop. Twitter, anything, Joey Madia, JoeyMadia. Oh, just right there on the screen. I would love to talk to you. I try to emulate Rosemary in that way.
That's awesome.
Whoever you were, no matter how busy she was.
She's proud of you and Tonya.
Thank you. And the same.
Yeah, very, very proud of you. And I forgot to share at the beginning too. I think I did the last time you were on, that you and I have a shared friendship with Gary and Suzanne, Gary Manson, Suzanne Mitchell, fabulous people. I have yet to meet you guys in person, but right. I tell Gary and Suzanne this. It's like, I've known you. I feel like I've known you forever. That's how I feel about that, you and Tonya. And so I know when we do meet, it's just going to be like,
I can't wait.
We've known each other for years. This was such an amazing show. Definitely have you back. There's so many other aspects we can talk about. Go down the rabbit hole a little bit more. I know we didn't get to a little bit on astral travel and lucid dreaming. That's a whole show in and of itself. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, likewise. So this show, of course, will be archived for you on all the audio listening platforms, afterlifechronicles.podbean.com as well. There you have it, guys. Joey Madia, just accolades galore. So fantastic show. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend coming up. It is Thursday night. We are supposed to get rain, and I feel it, because when we get rain, I feel like my head's in a vice. So it is coming. So have a wonderful weekend. Of course, here at the Afterlife Chronicles, we are exploring the connection between life, death, and beyond, and bridging the gap between the living world and afterlife, one experience at a time. Good night, guys, and I will see you next week.